drove up the narrow mountain road in his old truck, dust flying behind him. The cabin waited somewhere in the forest ahead, a place he had never seen. His grandfather had died 3 months ago, and the lawyers had told him there was property in Montana. An old cabin, some land. That was it. His sister sat in the passenger seat, looking at the map on her phone. She did not like being out here. The mountains were too big, too quiet, and there was no signal for miles. The main house appeared first through the trees. It was older than expected, built from logs and stone, with a roof that sagged in places. The windows were dirty. No one had lived here for years. The lawyers had told them that their grandfather had owned this property for 50 years, but had not visited it in the last 20 years of his life. Parked the truck and got out. The air was cold and thin. The sun was starting to go down, painting the sky orange and red. Joined him, pulling her jacket tight. They walked to the front door together. Used the key the lawyers had given him. It turned and the door opened. The inside smelled like dust and old wood. Furniture sat under white sheets. Pictures hung on the walls, covered in a layer of gray dust. They saw photographs of their grandfather as a young man, standing next to a woman they guessed was their grandmother. Walked through the rooms slowly. In the main bedroom, he found an old desk. He opened the drawers and found papers, old letters, bills from decades ago. Then, in the bottom drawer, he felt something metal underneath the wooden base. He pulled at the base. It came loose. Underneath lay a piece of metal and an old leather journal. The metal was like nothing had ever seen before. It was smooth and cold, shaped like a key, but it was too strange to be ordinary. It did not feel like gold or steel. It felt almost alive, as if it was warm from the inside. Took the key and the journal into the living room where waited. He opened the journal carefully. The first page had writing in a neat hand. It said, "If anyone opens this, Earth needs them." Felt his skin go cold. He turned the page. The handwriting was his grandfather's. He knew it from letters their grandfather had sent them over the years. The first entry was dated 1954. Read out loud to. "I met someone today that I cannot describe in normal words. They came from the sky, though not in any machine that makes sense. Their ship was on fire when it came down in the valley near the cabin. I watched it fall. I should have called for help. I should have told someone, but I walked toward it instead. When I reached it, I found them, a person, if I can call them that. They were hurt and they were dying. I could have left them there. The smart thing would have been to leave, but I did not. I brought them here." Interrupted him. She wanted to stop reading. She wanted to call the police or the government or someone who would understand what was happening, but kept reading. The journal explained that their grandfather had hidden the visitor in the cabin for several weeks. The visitor was not from Earth. The visitor was an explorer from a place so far away that could not imagine the distance. The visitor taught their grandfather about technology that humans did not have, about medicine, about how to survive on worlds that wanted to kill you, about how to fight enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. In return, their grandfather agreed to keep secrets. He agreed to guard something important, something hidden in the cabin, something that the visitor called a key to the future. The visitor left in another ship that came for them in the middle of the night. But before they left, they gave their grandfather instructions. They told him what to do if danger ever came to Earth. They told him that others like them had come to Earth long ago, and that there were humans living in places beyond Earth. Humans that the governments of the world did not know about. Humans that had been sent away to survive. And found the cabin that night, using a map their grandfather had drawn in the journal. It was actually underground, hidden beneath what looked like an old storage shed on the property. The shed door opened when held the metal key near it. Inside, stairs went down into the darkness. They used their phone lights to see. The stairs were long, and the air got colder as they went deeper. At the bottom, they found a door made of metal that looked like nothing on Earth. It was smooth and black, and it seemed to absorb light instead of reflect it. Held the key up to it. The door opened. What they found inside made them stop breathing. The room was huge and filled with machines. Screens glowed with light even though no one had been here to turn them on. Charts and star maps covered the walls. Some of the maps showed constellations recognized, but others showed stars and planets he had never seen. There were symbols on the walls that looked like writing but made no sense. In the center of the room sat a machine made of crystal. It was beautiful and terrible. It glowed with a blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Cables connected it to everything else in the room. Walked closer to it. He felt drawn to it, like it was calling to him with a voice he could not hear but could understand. Grabbed his arm. She was scared. She told him they needed to leave, they needed to tell someone, they needed to call for help. But was reading the journals that were stored in a cabinet near the crystal machine. His grandfather had kept detailed notes for 70 years. He had written about the visitor and the warning they had left. He had written about the signal that the crystal machine could send. A signal that would travel across space faster than anything humans had built. A signal that would reach people on other worlds, people who were waiting for it. The last journal entry was dated 3 months ago, just before their grandfather died. It was simple. I am too old now, I cannot do what must be done. Someone else must finish this. Someone must send the signal when the time comes. The time is coming now, I can feel it. The visitor told me it would come. They said I would not live to see it, but someone in my family would. Someone would have to be brave enough to do what I could not. Looked at his sister, was crying. She understood now what their grandfather had done, what he had guarded, what he had left behind. Made a decision. He told to get the trucks from the house. He told her to bring down everything they needed to stay at the cabin for a while. He told her they were not going to leave, not yet. He was going to understand what the crystal machine did. He was going to read every journal. Did not sleep that night. He sat in front of the computer screens in his grandfather's underground cabin and read every log file his grandfather had created. There were 70 years of notes, 70 years of watching, waiting, and preparing. His grandfather's first entries were confused and afraid. He had seen something that science said was impossible. He had helped something that nobody on Earth knew existed. But slowly, his confusion turned to purpose. His fear turned to determination. The visitor had given him knowledge, and his grandfather had used it. He had learned how to maintain the machines. He had learned how to read the signals that came from space. He had learned that humanity had a secret that very few people knew. Humans were not alone on Earth. Humans were scattered across the galaxy. Long ago, before recorded history, there had been a great evacuation. War had come to Earth, or something worse, and humans had been sent to other worlds. Mars, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, the asteroids, even places so far away that it would take months or years to reach them in ships. But those humans did not know they were human anymore. They thought they were the only humans in existence. They lived on their worlds and they survived. Some of them became explorers, some of them became soldiers, some of them became scientists and doctors. They built lives, families, and civilizations. And all this time, Earth's governments did not know. The people on Earth did not know. They thought they were alone. Found a file dated 1955. It was from the visitor before they left. It was a message recorded in a voice that sounded almost human, but not quite. The voice explained the truth to his grandfather. Your species was fractured long ago. Your people spread across many worlds. Some stayed on Earth. Others were sent to places where they could survive. This happened before your written history, before your religions and governments. It happened when Earth was still dangerous, still wild. A choice was made. Survival was more important than unity. The voice continued. I have been sent to observe you because my people believe that someday all humans will need to remember they are one species. Someday, someone will try to take what humanity has left to find. Someday, your people will need to stand together or die separately. Read through the logs of the signal. His grandfather had learned that the crystal machine was a beacon. It could send messages across vast distances, faster than any ship. It could reach humans on Mars and Europa and Titan. It could reach mining colonies in the asteroid belt. It could reach humans on worlds the people of Earth had never heard of. But sending the signal would change everything. It would reveal the secret. It would tell the scattered humans of Earth that they were needed. It would tell them that home was under threat. Came down the stairs with food and water and blankets. She had not slept either. She had been searching the house above, looking for anything else their grandfather had hidden. She found something important. In a locked safe behind a painting, there were documents, membership lists, names of people around the world who knew the truth, families like theirs, military people, scientists, government workers. They were all part of a network. They were all waiting for this moment. Read the names. Some were famous, some were not. They had positioned themselves in places of power or influence over 70 years. They had prepared in silence. They had waited for the day when someone would need to activate the beacon. Found a radio in the cabin. It was old but functional. His grandfather had used it to contact other people in the network. Turned it on and found a frequency his grandfather had written down. He sent a simple message in a code his grandfather had documented. The key has turned. The cabin is open. The response came back within minutes. a woman's voice calm and steady. "This is Helena Station, Mars Colony. We read you, Montana. Confirming beacon activation protocol. Stand by for further instructions." Could not believe it. There were people on Mars. There were people waiting. They had been waiting for 70 years. Sat next to him and took his hand. She understood what was about to happen. The signal would change the world, but it had to happen. Because somewhere in space something was coming. The visitor had warned his grandfather about it. The warning was written in the oldest journals. Something was coming toward Earth. Something that did not know humans existed here. Something that would try to take what it found. And when it came, the scattered branches of humanity would need to know. They would need to prepare. They would need to remember that they were human, and they would need to fight. Looked at the crystal machine. Its blue light pulsed steadily. He placed his hand on the activation panel, just as his grandfather had written down in the final entry. Nodded at him. "Press the button." The crystal machine began to glow brighter. The light filled the entire chamber. Could hear a humming sound, so deep and powerful that he felt it in his bones. The machines around the room began to power up fully. The screens showed data moving at speeds he could not follow. The signal was being sent, out into the darkness of space, to every human settlement beyond Earth, to colonies and outposts and ships that had been waiting for a signal that might never come. The message was simple. The message was clear. It was one sentence, repeated over and over across the void of space. "Home under attack. Prepare for war." The moment sent the signal, things began to change across the solar system. On Mars, in the domed cities beneath the red dust, soldiers and workers heard the alarm. In the asteroids, miners and traders received emergency broadcasts. On Europa, deep beneath the ice, research stations and military outposts came to full alert. People who had lived their whole lives without knowing Earth still existed suddenly learned they had a home. They learned that they were part of something bigger than themselves. David was working on the outer wall of Dome 7 on Mars. He was a construction worker, 28 years old, and he had been born on Mars. His parents were born on Mars. He had never seen Earth. To him, Earth was a story, something they talked about in school, but not something real. The alarm woke him at 3 in the morning. He ran to the operations center where his supervisor was watching a broadcast. The transmission was being sent to every human settlement at once. It showed 2 people in an underground room on Earth. The man was holding his hand on a glowing crystal device. The woman stood beside him. They looked scared and determined. The man spoke. His name was, he explained the truth. He told David and everyone watching that they were human, that their ancestors came from Earth, that they had been sent to safety a long time ago, and now Earth needed them. David could not believe what he was hearing. Around him, other workers stared at the screens in shock. Some of them started crying. Some of them got angry, but nobody tried to turn off the broadcast. Was working a late shift in the medical station on Titan. She was a doctor, and her job was to help the people who lived in the harsh conditions of Saturn's largest moon. She had studied human biology, alien biology, and the ways that different environments changed how people lived. When the broadcast came through, she was reading a research paper about how human bodies adapted to low gravity and cold temperatures. The broadcast interrupted everything. Watched the same message David watched, but understood something else. She understood that her years of studying alien biology might matter very soon. If something was coming to attack Earth, it would not be human. It would be something else. Something that evolved on a different world. And humanity would need someone who understood how aliens thought and acted. Was on Jovian Station, orbiting Jupiter. She was a woman in her 60s, and she was a retired military officer. She had served in battles that people on Earth did not know about. She had commanded ships and soldiers. She had made decisions that cost lives and saved lives. When she retired, she thought she was done with war. But when she heard the broadcast, she knew her retirement was over. She recognized the name. She had been waiting to hear that name all her life. Her great-grandfather had told her stories about a man in Montana who guarded something important. She had thought it was just a family legend. Contacted the military command on Mars and the asteroid colonies. She told them she was coming out of retirement. She told them to prepare their ships. She told them that whatever was coming would be strong and fast and dangerous. Still in the underground cabin began to receive messages from all across the solar system. The network his grandfather had built was activating. People who had been waiting, preparing, learning in secret for 70 years, were now revealing themselves. A captain on a cargo ship in the asteroid belt reported that she had military training. A scientist on a space station reported that they had weapons hidden in the station. A politician on the lunar base reported that government leaders were being briefed on the truth. But there were also problems. Many people did not want to believe the message. Some governments on Earth refused to accept that humans lived in space. Some governments tried to shut down the broadcasts. Some demanded to know who was and what authority he had to send messages to Earth. Had no authority except the key his grandfather left him. He was just a man who had found a secret. But in the chaos of the first hours after the signal was sent, people had to decide quickly whether to believe him or to ignore the warning. Worked with to send more proof. They sent records from his grandfather's journals. They sent technical specifications that proved the technology in the cabin could not have been built by humans. They sent images of the crystal machine and the underground facility. Slowly, people began to believe. David left his construction job and reported to the Mars Military Command, offered her expertise to help prepare for war against something humans had never fought before, began organizing a fleet from Jovian Station. They did not have much time. The warning was clear. Something was coming. Something would arrive within the year. In the cabin, kept broadcasting updates. He told all the scattered humans of the galaxy what he learned from his grandfather's records. He told them about their shared history. He told them about the visitor from long ago who had warned that this day would come. Coordinated with medical teams across the solar system, she prepared them for casualties from a war they had never fought. She studied the visitors' medical notes to understand what kind of injuries they might face. 3 days after sent the initial signal, they received the first transmission from deep space. It came from a human colony so far away that the signal had been traveling for months before it reached them. The message was simple. "We hear you, Earth. We are coming home." Knew then that the galaxy was waking up. Humans who had lived isolated lives were now remembering that the first real battle happened 90 days after sent the signal. A Dominion scout ship was hit by human fighter jets that launched from hidden bases in the mountains of Earth. The scout ship crashed in the Canadian wilderness. The pilots never reported back to their command. The Dominion did not expect resistance. They had studied thousands of civilizations. They knew how to conquer planets, but they did not know about the humans that had spread across the galaxy. They did not know that humans had 70 years of hidden preparation. They did not know that humans had ships hidden in asteroids and under ice moons and built into the stations of space. When they lost their scout ship, they sent more ships to investigate. Humans hit them too, fast, coordinated attacks. The ships were larger and more powerful. They had better weapons, but they were also slow and predictable. Found himself in a military command center that had been revealed under the mountains of Montana. His grandfather had built this place as well. It had been hidden for 50 years. Now it was the center of the human war effort for Earth's defense. Military officers from around the world were there. General Carter commanded the ground forces. Admiral commanded the naval and air forces. They both looked at when they needed something. He was the only one who truly understood the technology his grandfather had left behind. Studied the maps of space. The Dominion had a large fleet heading toward Earth, but the humans had something they had not expected. Humans could think in new ways. Humans could see problems from angles that other species had never tried. David flew fighter jets for the Mars Defense Force. He was not trained as a military pilot, but he learned fast. On his 5th mission, he destroyed 3 combat drones. His commanding officer recommended him for advanced training. David wanted to tell his family about it, but they lived on Earth. They did not know what he did now. They would not understand until this was all over. Worked in a field hospital, treating injured pilots and soldiers. She had studied the visitors' medical notes about biology. She understood how they were different from humans. She knew that human pain was different from pain. Human bodies healed differently. This knowledge helped her save lives. When the first soldier was captured on Earth, was brought to study them. It was badly wounded and dying. It could not speak human languages, but understood something from its biology that military officers did not. It was afraid, not of death but of being alone, were social creatures. They needed their colony to survive. Used this knowledge. She treated the prisoner with respect. She spoke to them even though they did not understand. They lived longer because of her care. and before they died, they sent out a distress signal that military analysts were able to intercept. The signal revealed a weakness in the command structure. They relied on constant communication with their command ship. If they lost that communication, they panicked. They became disorganized. Coordinated with military leaders across all human settlements, he suggested a strike at the command ship. It would be dangerous. Dozens of humans would die, but if it worked, the fleet would break apart. Led the attack from Jovian Station. She had gathered ships from the asteroid colonies and deep space outposts. The humans flew toward the command ship in a pattern that looked random. They could not predict where they would strike. The battle lasted 4 hours. Human ships were destroyed. Combat drones fell from space. In the end, the human attack reached the command ship. A woman named Lisa, who had been born on Europa and trained to be a fighter pilot, flew her ship directly at the command ship's reactor. She ejected just before impact. The command ship exploded. The fleet, suddenly without orders, became confused. They stopped attacking. They started to retreat. Humans followed them, hitting their ships as they fled. Within days, the first wave of the invasion was destroyed. But the Dominion was vast. This was only the beginning. They would send more ships. They would not stop until they conquered Earth or humans stopped them completely. Stood in the command center and received reports from all across the solar system. Humans were fighting. Humans were dying. But humans were also winning because they had unity. They had remembered they were one species. They had chosen to stand together. Moved through the hospitals of Earth and space, coordinating medical response. She had become the chief medical officer for all human settlements. She worked without sleep, coordinating treatment for wounded soldiers, sharing new medical techniques across all human territories, and preparing for the longer war that everyone knew was coming. The cabin in Montana was no longer a secret place. News teams had found it. Governments wanted to study it. Scientists wanted to understand it, but kept his grandfather's logs and the crystal machine protected. They were too important to let anyone destroy them in the chaos of war. Made a broadcast to all humans in the solar system. He explained what his grandfather had learned from the visitor. He explained that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or ships or technology. It was in the ability to choose to stand together. It was in compassion for those who were 6 months after the invasion began. The fighting moved beyond Earth's solar system. Human ships, built with technology from the cabin and designed by minds across the galaxy, traveled deeper into space. The Dominion lost battle after battle, but they did not surrender. They kept coming and humans kept fighting. Had not left the command center in Montana for weeks. He slept at his desk. He ate food that people brought him. He sent orders and received reports and tried to keep track of a war that was happening across millions of miles of space. Had not seen him in that time. She was on a hospital ship near Mars, coordinating the treatment of thousands of wounded soldiers. Many of them were humans she had never met before, humans born on worlds she could not imagine. She saved lives. She lost lives. She learned that war was not clean or simple. War was confusion and pain and hard choices. Had become the supreme commander of all human military forces. She was an old woman, and she was tired, but she was the best strategic mind that humanity had. She made decisions that cost lives to save more lives. She understood what had to be done, even when it was terrible to do it. Lisa had become famous. The woman who destroyed the command ship was celebrated across human settlements. But fame did not make her happy. It made her sad. She knew that her victory had also meant the deaths of thousands of soldiers. She had learned that war meant killing creatures that were just following orders, just like her. After 6 months, the Dominion sent a transmission. They wanted to negotiate. They had been defeated in space. More of their colonies were falling to human attack. They wanted peace. Received the message in the cabin. His grandfather's crystal machine had received it and processed it. The message was clear. They wanted to talk. But the human governments did not agree on what to do. Some wanted to keep fighting until all forces were destroyed. Some wanted to accept peace. Some wanted to demand that the pay for the lives they had taken. Called a meeting of all the leaders. General Carter from Earth, Admiral from the Space Forces, from Jovian Station, scientists and doctors and politicians. They gathered in a secure facility in Montana, the same place where his grandfather's cabin had been hidden. Stood before them, he was not a military officer. He was not a politician. But he held his grandfather's journal and a copy of the visitor's message. He read them what the visitor had said 70 years ago. The visitor had warned that someday, humans would face enemies. And when they did, humans would have to choose what kind of species they wanted to be. They could be conquerors, killing everything that threatened them, or they could be protectors, defending themselves but also choosing mercy when it was possible. Argued for negotiation. They had tried to conquer Earth, but they had not destroyed it. They were an empire that followed rules and laws. They could be taught to respect human territory. They could be made to agree that Earth was off limits. Argued for continued war. She said that peace with them would be fragile. They would attack again when they had built new ships and new weapons. General Carter suggested a middle path. Negotiate for peace but keep human forces strong. Build up defenses. Prepare for the day when they might attack again. But do not attack if they do not attack. A vote was taken. The humans voted for negotiation. Lisa carried the first peace message to the negotiators. She flew with a small team to a neutral location in space, far from any human or world. There, for the first time, humans and sat down to talk. The negotiations took weeks, but they resulted in a treaty that would recognize human territory, Earth would be protected, human colonies in space would be protected, they would not attack, humans would not attack, trade would happen instead of war. It was not a perfect peace. Many humans had died fighting many had died fighting humans, but it was peace and it was better than endless war. The cabin in Montana became a museum. Visitors came from all over the world and from all human settlements in space to see where the secret had been kept. They saw the crystal machine. They read the journals. They learned about his grandfather and the visitor who had trusted him with humanity's future. Left the command center for the first time in months. He went back to the cabin, met him there. They stood in the underground chamber and looked at the crystal machine that had changed everything. Asked what would happen now. Would humans go back to being separate? Would the Earth government stay separate from the space settlements? Did not know the answer. He said that humans would have to learn how to be united and free at the same time. They would have to learn how to help each other without controlling each other. It would be difficult, but they had done difficult things before. Retired from the military. She went to live on a space station near Jupiter. She spent her time teaching the history of the war and the history of human expansion to young people from Earth and from the colonies. She wanted them to know what they had accomplished when they chose to remember they were one species. Founded a research institute to study the biology of alien species. She wanted humans to understand other civilizations before there was conflict. She wanted other wars to be prevented through understanding rather than fought through weapons. David stayed as a military pilot, but he also became a teacher. He trained new pilots from Earth alongside pilots born on Mars and Europa and the asteroids. He helped them learn to work together, to trust each other, to see each other as part of the same family. Wrote in his grandfather's journal. He recorded the end of the first invasion. He recorded the peace treaty. He recorded the births of children born during the war and the moment when humans from different worlds shook hands in peace. He finished his entry with these words, "My grandfather helped a visitor because it was the right thing to do. That one act started a chain of events that changed human history. It taught us that we were not alone. It taught us that we could be strong together. It taught us that we could choose mercy over revenge. I do not know what will happen next, but I know that we face it as one species united across the stars. That is what makes us human. That is what will make us survive." Closed the journal. He walked up the stairs out of the underground chamber. Above, the sun was setting over the Montana mountains. The world was at peace. The galaxy was at peace. But somewhere in the darkness of space, other civilizations watched and waited. They saw that humans had united. They saw that humans had faced an empire and survived. Some would want to study humans. Some would want to trade with humans. Some would want to become allies. Humanity's story was not finished. It was only beginning. And it began with a cabin in Montana that had been locked for 70 years. It began with a man who chose to help someone in need. It began with a decision that echoed across the stars and brought humanity home to itself. It was encouraged to fight for others. He told them that his grandfather had helped an alien when it would have been easier to turn away. That one act of kindness had started everything. That one choice had changed the future. Finished his broadcast with simple words. "We are human. We survive. We protect each other. We will win this war not because we have the best technology, but because we know what we are fighting for." Across the solar system, humans who had been isolated and alone now knew they were part of something larger. They fought harder. They saved each other. They remembered they were human. The first phase of the war was over. The real war was just beginning. Were part of a family. They were remembering Earth. They were preparing to do something they had never thought they would have to do. They were preparing to defend their species, eager to learn what his grandfather had learned. And when the time came, he was going to send the signal. The blue light of the crystal machine filled the room, and knew that nothing in his life would ever be the same again.